Hey everybody, how we doing today? Final video for today. So, this is an exclusive from Reuters. U.S. migrant policy sends thousands of children, including babies, back to Mexico. Since January, the U.S. government has ordered 16,000 migrants under 18, including nearly 500 infants, to wait with their families in Mexico for U.S. immigration court hearings, a Reuters analysis of government data found. Along the U.S.-Mexico border, babies and toddlers are living in high-crime cities, often in crowded shelters and tents or on the streets for the weeks or months it takes to get a U.S. asylum hearing. The risk of violence and illness runs high and is of particular concern for families with young children, or those with chronic health conditions, according to interviews with health professionals, migrants and workers, and advocates. The children whose numbers have not been previously reported are among tens of thousands of migrants returned to Mexico under a Trump administration policy known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, or MPP. Most are from Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador. U.S. immigration officials did not respond to requests for comment on Reuters data findings. This is why I love Reuters. They have a lot of exclusives, a lot of really great exclusives. They get data, and this data always makes the government feel really uncomfortable, which makes me happy as hell. Because I love making the government uncomfortable, because they're an authoritarian power. They need to be shrunk. We need smaller government. So anything that makes them sweat makes me happy. But really, though, if you ask me, I believe in my own unique ideology of nationalism, which at some point I plan on writing a treatise about, called benevolent nationalism. I believe that it is okay for immigrants to come here, but they have to do it with permission from the people of this country and with permission from the government. They cannot simply come in here whenever the hell they want. So to alleviate their issue, what I would do is speed up the process. Maybe store them in a safer location while they wait, but speed up the process to eliminate the danger. The balance of the process is offset by too slow, too much regulation. I think they're deliberately slowing down, trying to encourage them to not immigrate here. I think that's what they're trying to do. Which, by the way, I must say that is very, very, that's very Danish, really. That's actually very much like the Danish policy, which has always left me feeling very uncomfortable, the Danes. According to the Department of Homeland Security, decisions about whether a person is placed in MPP are made by border agents on a case-by-case basis and include consultation with medical professionals. Unaccompanied minors should not be sent back to Mexico according to the program guidelines, but children can be sent back with their parents. Trump administration officials have said they are doing everything possible to discourage migrant families from making dangerous journeys to the United States, often in the hands of human smugglers, which they say needlessly put children at risk. Numbers growing as flu season looms. About one-third of the nearly 50,000 migrants in the MPP program as of October 3rd were children under 18, according to the latest data available from the Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR, which oversees U.S. immigration courts. Of those, Reuters found around 4,300 under 5 years old and 481 under 1 year old. Blanca Aguilar, a 27-year-old mother from Guatemala, is living in a makeshift encampment around 40 small tents, cramped together in back rooms of a church outside Tijuana. Across the border from San Diego, children can be heard coughing and crying throughout the night. She and other mothers told Reuters during a recent visit. When one gets sick, they all do, Aguilar said. Her 2-year-old son Adrian has had a recurrent cough with wheezing, as well as bouts of diarrhea since they arrived in August. He's been sick a lot, she said, adding that she suspects he may be developing asthma. Another mother at the same shelter, 34-year-old Marla Zuniga from Honduras, said her 1-year-old daughter Montserrat recently had a convulsion due to a high fever and had to be taken to a hospital. She couldn't breathe, she said. Zuniga said she had fled violence in her home country but plans to return there because she fears for her daughter's life in Tijuana. DHS said it could not comment on individual cases. Mexican officials did not respond to requests for comment on the conditions in migrant shelters. Reuters was unable to corroborate the diagnosis of the Zuniga and Aguilar children. Doctors and nurses visiting shelters and camps in Mexican border towns, however, told Reuters they have seen cases of chickenpox, scabies, respiratory infections, skin rashes, eye infections, and gastrointestinal issues among children and adults. Well, I'm not big on the idea of people self-diagnosing because they're not trained physicians. They may not even know what the hell they're talking about. However, given the tight quarters and the conditions of travel to America and from it, really, there could be anything in the air they're breathing in those shelters. There could be anything. There could be anything in there with them. It's a frightening prospect. Children under 5 and especially under the age of 2 are at high risk of serious flu complications, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and the flu season is about to start. American doctors and nurses volunteering in Tijuana with the Refugee Health Alliance hope to be able to provide flu shots in a few of the shelters there, but the effort is hard to organize, said coordinator Phil Canate. The vaccines need to be stored in cold, regulated conditions, and the Mexican government requires a physician licensed in Mexico to supervise the effort, as well as sign consent for every patient, he said. The U.S. government has said in guidance documents that migrants with known physical or mental health issues are not candidates for the MPP program, but advocates say it's not clear what qualifies as a medical exemption from MPP. Jennifer Yaminez, a 30-year-old Salvadoran, said she arrived at the border in July with 11-year-old twins and her 8-month-old son Jacob, who was born with lungs that had not fully developed. Although she explained Jacob's condition to border agents, she said the agents sent her and her children back to Ciudad Juarez, where the family ended up sleeping on the floor of a crowded shelter. Recently, she managed to find a doctor who noted in Jacob's medical records seen by Reuters that living in the shelter had complicated his health care. U.S. officials recently admitted the family to stay with relatives in the United States, a rare occurrence. Reuters found that 1% of migrants assigned to MPP have so far been transferred out of the program. The U.S. government has signed a series of bilateral deals with governments Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador to push more people to seek asylum closer to home. In May, nearly 85,000 family units, parents with kids, were arrested at the U.S.-Mexico border, a monthly record. In August, the number of families arrested dropped by 70% after the administration ramped up MPP and other measures to deter migration. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that lax U.S. asylum laws encourage people to show up at the border with their children. Before MPP, it was common practice to release arriving families in the United States to wait out their U.S. court hearings, something Trump and others said allowed many migrants to disappear into the country to live illegally. Immigrant advocacy groups say most released immigrants show up for their court hearings. Some are suing to halt the MPP policy in a federal appeals court. The 9th U.S. Circuit is due to rule on the case soon. The thing is, our border policy on migration needs to undergo a mass reformation. We need to change the way the game is played, because this is literally killing people. Now, personally, I think that what I would want to see from it is, one, the process be made fast, be relatively fast compared to the current process, but also assimilation into American life and American culture be encouraged. You come here to be American. The more similar we are to each other, the better we get along. And I think they're perfectly willing to accept a trade like that in the face of leaving a country where their future is not guaranteed. That's more than acceptable if you really cared about your future. Also, while waiting for asylum or while waiting to migrate, they should be kept in a place that is clean. There should be a separate space made available, not paid for with taxpayer money, but possibly contracted by a private corporation. There's all kinds of non-profits and charities who I'm sure would be perfectly willing to accept donations for such a project. A civilian organization could easily do that, create a shelter for the migrants, and tell the government, hey, you need to put the people here. I think that would be a beautiful thing. That would be wonderful. But to finish this article off, nothing for them here. According to the Reuters analysis, thousands of children are waiting court hearings in border towns where the risk of kidnappings, rapes, and assaults is high. About 5,600 children in the MPP program had their cases assigned to San Diego Immigration Court, north of Tijuana. Most of the others were assigned to Texas courts, 6,800 to San Antonio and El Paso, and 34 to Brownsville. Jimenez, the Salvadoran mother, said that when she heard her family was being sent from El Paso to Ciudad Juarez, known for its high murder rate. It was like they threw a bucket of cold water on me. Mexico isn't a place I trust to go out alone with my 3 children. Brownsville is just north of Matamoros in Mexico. It's a million-plus state of violent battleground for drug cartels. Florida resident Helen Perry, a nurse in the U.S. Army Reserve who joined a volunteer aid group headed to Matamoros on Labor Day weekend, told Reuters she saw families camped out in donated tents, each with between 5 to 10 people sleeping aside a few dozen feet from the border. One family with 4 small children was curled up under a tree. She said people lacked access to fresh water and proper restrooms and were bathing in the Rio Grande River. Ew. One baby Perry examined had a chronic eye infection and was beginning to develop scarring, threatening his vision. Another had a fungal rash under his arm, so severe it limited his movement. Perry said she saw breastfeeding mothers so dehydrated that they could not nurse their babies, and parents chewing up donated pizza into mush to feed their infants. Some children were showing early signs of malnutrition, she said. This is really nothing for them there. Yeah, I mean, at this point it really has become American asylum or death. And I know many people will find that unacceptable, and the reason why they do is because the Democrats, because of the sanctuary cities. It has literally ruined it for everyone else. When you come over to the border illegally, find the sanctuary city, and illegally hide in the country, you're ruining it for everyone else. Because you're making it an unpalatable offer. You're making immigration and asylum undesirable. Because you are not respecting those in authority, you are not respecting the people of this country. You are all me, 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 me. You are not thinking of others. You are not being respectful, which I understand is difficult in your situation. Believe me, I sympathize with you. But you are ruining it for everyone else with your actions. These people need to be kept in cleaner conditions. They need some kind of inoculation. They need to be treated. They need medical experts. The process for asylum needs to be sped up. If they are going to stay, then they need to be assimilated into American culture. And if they are just going to afford temporary asylum until conditions in their home country improve, then they can get a green card, and that process should be sped up. It should probably be no slower than the process of getting a state ID or a license in the mail. You know, so we're probably looking at 1 to 2 weeks. Does that not sound reasonable? I think it sounds perfectly reasonable. Because this is an unacceptable alternative. At this point, it really has become American asylum or death. Anyway. Peace!